Recording now, this is lesson 3.1 on writing large numbers. Before watching the recording, please make sure that you have the 3.1 writing large numbers worksheet in front of you, along with a pencil and perhaps a highlighter. So if you need to pause the recording to get those items, please do so now. You'll also notice at the top of the page, I've written out an abbreviated place value chart. So I've got each period highlighted here. So you should know, and just as a review from the last video, that our place value system is based on periods, which are groups of 3 numbers. And each period has 110s ones place, 110s ones place, etc. And you know, starting from the lowest period, units, up to the highest period that we'll be dealing with this year, billions. And do know that we do have trillions as well as a higher period than the billions. So you can jot that down as well. I'm going to continue just going over the different forms in which we write large numbers. And a lot of this is similar to how we write decimal numbers too, which will be in a separate lesson. So just a review of vocabulary. So the first one being standard form. So think to yourself, what does standard form mean? Well, standard form is writing the numbers as it is, pretty much. How we primarily deal with numbers in math. So write this number down. And notice when I'm writing the number down, I'm actually using spaces in between periods versus commas. I have it exaggerated, the spaces. I do prefer it. It's a preference, but if you want to use commas, go right ahead. And as a further reference point, I'm going to jot down the names of each period above as a guide so you understand how the numbers are placed in each period. Pause the recording and then try to say this number out to yourself before I get into it. Okay, so just as a review, you want to always name each group of periods or each group of 3 numbers according to the period that it occupies. So we would say 24,815,589,002. We try to avoid using and in the middle because and is actually reserved for when we use decimals, so decimal points in particular. So that's how you would say it. Again, 24,815,589,002. Now, since we've said this number in standard form, I'm going to jump ahead to number 3. And because we've already said the number, it's actually easier to put it in words first. Now, the way I'm going to write it in words, I'm going to actually list it according to the period, so it's easier to read and identify the periods as well. So I'm just going to write it up top here so that I don't have to keep scrolling. Uh, 589,002. Okay, so I'll just go down here. So how we break this down into words. So look at how I'm doing, and you can do the same as well. 24 billion. And then we've got 800. 15 million. Now notice I have that on the next line because I'm separating it by periods. People often ask too, do you need to have the hyphen in between 20 and 4 and other compound numbers? I mean, it is preferred. It won't be incorrect if you forget it. 589,000. Spelling doesn't count either, but try your best to get it as accurate as possible. And then finally 2, being in the units period. You don't say 2 units, we would just say 2. So that's how we would break it down in words. Again, listing it out down line by line according to periods. Okay, I'm going to go back up to expanded form. Expanded form you would have seen in the past too. So if you think about expanded form and its definition, essentially what it's doing is that you are expanding the number to show the value of each digit. So you're showing the value of each individual digit. I'm going to show this to you in two different ways. So you can do either way. I would say one way is maybe a little bit less challenging than the other way, but please choose either way in order to express a number in expanded form. I'm going to color code here. So the first way, I'll just do in blue here, is where you're doing expanded form just using addition. And again, I'm going to do it slightly differently than maybe you've seen in the past because I actually prefer to stack it vertically so that you don't run into the danger of missing any digits or writing an incorrect value of a digit. I'm going to skip over the zero values, but you'll just see in a second. So we're going to start off with the first two here. So we know the value of that, and I'm just going to do an HTO here as well, so that we're also keeping track of the 110s and ones as we're doing the expanded form. So the first one is going to be 20, and I'm going to count how many zeros we need. So we know that it's in the 10 billions place, so it needs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 zeros. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Notice again, I'm using spaces between periods. The next digit we're going to deal with is the 4 billionths place. And if you notice, because of stacking, it's easy to line up and to count how many zeros you need to show the full value of each digit. Now, if you want to pause the recording and do the rest on your own and then catch up and check your answers with what we end up here in the video, go right ahead. I'm just going to continue. The next one is going to be 800 million. And then 10 million. Again, I'm keeping track of the amount of zeros because I've stacked them easily. And then the next would be 5 million. And then the next would be 500,000. You might not have enough room, my apologies. So just you can do what I'm doing here and squeeze it in, or you can do this on a separate sheet of graph paper. 80,000, 9,000, and I'm going to skip over these two zeros here in the units place, and I'm just going to write 2 here. Now, because it's an expanded form, I'm going to show addition because we're adding it. Okay, because we are expanding the value, the number to show the value of each digit. So I'm going to write the answer down below so we know what it is. If we did it correctly, 24,815,589,002. I'm going to do commas just because I had to squeeze it in a little bit. Okay, so that's the first method. The second method is, now if you're not totally clear on how to do the second method, then that's fine. I just want to show you though, there's actually a third method where you can even make the second method shorter, but I'm not going to cover that in this video. So the other method is using multiplication. And what you're doing is you're actually taking this and you're writing each value of each digit as a power of 10. So what I mean by that is you're looking at, and you have to use brackets in between. You're looking at 2 and you're going to multiply it by the value of that place. We know it's in the 10 billion spot, so we actually do 2 times 10 billion. So we're using the same amount of zeros because it's in the 10 billion spot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is a little bit longer than the first method, but just want to show you what it looks like. So it's 2 times, it's multiplication. We keep it in brackets, but each bracket has to be closed and you're adding each bracket. So you have plus, and then you do the next one. So that's going to be 4 times, again, 4 billion. Now I'm deliberately writing it this way so it's lined up. Plus, and then we got 8 times 800 million plus, and then we have, we can just do 1 times, and again, I'm lining it up like this, so I'm trying not to lose any zeros here. And then we've got 5 times, oh, I just noticed I made an error here. Okay. That's good here. So we've got, this should be 4 times 1 billion. This should be 8 times 100 million. Okay, so now we're on track here. So 5 times, we've got 5 times a million here. Plus, we've got 8 times, did I miss them? Oh yeah, sorry. I missed the other 5 here. So we've got 5 times 500,000, 5 times 100,000. Plus, okay, so we've got 2 5s. Notice how it is, this one is a little bit trickier because sometimes I lose track of what I'm doing. 8 times 10,000 plus 9 times 1,000 plus 2 times 1. Okay, and then that equals, that's a lot of writing, 24,815,589,002. Which method do you prefer? Up to you. But so long as you understand how to properly expand the number to show the value of each digit, because this further reinforces your understanding of each digit's value. Okay, so finally the last one, which I've coined media form before, but I don't think it's exactly what we call it. But I want you to think about how would you typically see, and I know I keep rewriting our original number, but it's just easier than scrolling the screen up and down here. So I'm just going to rewrite this here. So this is our original number from the top, right? Now, think to yourself, would you typically see this number, 24,815,589,002, reported, say, on in any sort of media that you see, like thinking particularly social media, right? Maybe this is the number of likes that someone has on a video in TikTok or Instagram or YouTube. Think about this number being reported as maybe a country's or city's population, right? Maybe not a city's, more like a country's population. Is how would a number like this be reported in the media? Well, typically, you wouldn't actually have this whole number being reported. So it actually gets abbreviated, and this may have been covered in the previous class too. There's different ways it can get abbreviated, right? So for example, now this is actually a new way it can get abbreviated. Some people would even just write down, again, in social media, 24B, 24 billion. Now, if we were to properly round this, it actually would be 25 billion because the next digit over from the 4 is an 8. Okay. Notice though, and I want you to think about, like, what does that do with the actual number and how data is actually reported in the media? Because if the media is just rounding it, you're actually kind of eliminating all the other numbers after the 10 billions place. Other ways this could be reported, 24.8 B or 24.8 billion. That's probably like maybe the amount of subscribers to a streaming service like Spotify, 24.8 billion. It would be reported like that. 25 billion. Sometimes you'd have the full word of billion written too. Sometimes you'll see it to 2 decimal places, so 24.82 billion. So B or billion, same thing. If it was million, you'd have M. So I also ask you the question too, do you all know what 5.9K means? Okay, you've probably seen K used before. So K actually stands for 1,000. So if that helps you to interpret what 5.9K is, that's also a number, an example of a number that would be in media form too. Okay, so we reviewed the different kinds of forms. So going from the top here, we've got standard form, the numbers as it is. Expanded form, expanding it in 2 different ways. We've got words, which again, it's easier to write it out in words when you are listing it according to the period, and finally media form.